Kelly. Join me as I show you how to make some herringbone rings. We're going to be learning what beads to use, what not to use, how to start and end the herringbone. Gather up your materials that are listed in the description below on your bead on it board and let's get started. To begin, we're using 11/0 seed beads, 2mm bicones, and 15/0 seed beads. We're going to be doing a herringbone stitch just like this patchwork one here. And you can see this has 3 rows of our herringbone. Instead of doing 3 complete rows of herringbone, which is an option, we are going to be doing 2 rows of herringbone with some bicones in the middle. There's multiple different ways to start herringbone stitch, but I'm going to show you, I think, the easiest way to comprehend and to work with it. We are going to have a size 10 needle here, put some size 8 white dragon thread on it, and we're going to do a ladder stitch to begin. Picking up 2 of our 11/0 seed beads and letting them drop down next to that stop bead. Pick up 2 more of your 11/0 seed beads and sew back through the 2 that you originally just put on, starting next to the stop bead but not sewing through it, and back up through those 2. From here we want to progress outward, so we're going to go down through the 2 beads that we just added as our second row of our ladder stitch. Now we're going to repeat this for a total of 6 rows. 2 more beads get added. We go into the opposite side of the beads where the thread is currently coming out. And then to progress, go through the 2 beads that you just added. That's our 3 rows of ladder stitch. We're going to go on till we have 6 rows. Once you complete your 6 rows, your thread is going to be coming out the bottom on the same side as the stop bead. What we are going to do is step up and get ready to do our herringbone stitch now coming out of the ladder. To step up, we are going to add a 15/0 seed bead, and we are going to step up from the second bead in the last row of our ladder stitch, coming out the first bead of that ladder stitch row. Now we're going to get ready to do our herringbone stitch. The herringbone stitch is going to consist of 2 beads that get added at one time. We're going to come out of bead number 1, add 2 beads, and go down bead number 2. Just 1 bead. When we pull the thread, those 2 beads are going to sit almost in an open V section. That open V section there, having that middle open, is what you're going to stack upon as you add more rows to the herringbone stitch. From here, then you're going to go up your next row and go up through just the 1 bead of your second group of 2. Normally, you would add 2 more beads and then come down through bead number 2 in that middle grouping of 2. However, we are not going to add any beads here because we want to leave room for our 2mm crystals. We're then going to go up through the next bead in line, and we're working our way between those 2 beads and just up through 1. And as we exit here, we're going to start our second row of our herringbone stitch. 2 beads go on, and you go down bead number 2. So herringbone stitch is based on rows, adding 2 beads at a time, coming out of 1 bead, adding 2 beads, sewing down the next bead as well. When you're done and you're coming off to the left, I find it most comfortable to flip the design. We're going to start that same process again and build our next set of our herringbone. On goes a 15, which is just used to decorate thread on the side, and you're going to step up through the rightmost bead, the last one you've added. Coming out the top here, grab 2 more of your 11/0 seed beads, go down through bead number 2. So you're up bead number 1, add 2 beads, come down bead number 2. When you come down bead number 2, you are going to add your crystal. And we're going to go over up through bead number 1 in row 2 of our herringbone. From here, 2 more beads get added, and I'm going to sew down through bead number 2. As I sew down through bead number 2, I flip the project in my hand, so now once again, I can work from right to left. Make those 2 little beads kind of sit down right next to one another, and there's your second row of your herringbone stitch. So see how the herringbone stitch here you've got your herringbone rows, almost columns going up the side, and we have our crystal in the middle. When we're off to the side, grab a 15-0 to decorate the side, and go back up towards the center of that herringbone row through bead number 1. Exiting through that bead number 1, grab 2 more seed beads, and sew down through bead number 2. When you're towards the middle here, you're going to once again sew through that same 2mm bead and then over to the next column of your herringbone through bead number 1. So we added the bicone once, and then we sewed back through the bicone a second time. Adding 2 more beads, coming out bead number 1, we add 2 beads and we sew down through bead number 2. And as I'm doing that, I flip it in my hand, so that way I'm off to the right side again. Here we go, 15 on, up through that last bead that was just added. Coming out with our thread between those 2 beads nestled, we add 2 more beads and we sew down. This time when we come out of the herringbone stitch, we're going to add another one of our 2mm bicones and then sew over to the second column of our herringbone stitch. 2 more beads get added and you sew down through bead number 2. So always the 2 columns of herringbone. You're coming up bead number 1, adding 2 beads, sewing down bead number 2. Off to the side, add your 15-0 and come on up to the top. Coming up to the top, add 2 more 11s, down bead number 2, and go through that bicone one more time. So the bicones, you're always adding it 1 stitch, and the next row, you're sewing through it again. That's going to center it on the design and have it look like the crystals are floating right in the middle of the herringbone. Now, why are we sewing through 2 times? We're sewing through 2 times because the height of the 2mm bicone is about the height of 2 11-0 seed beads. If I switched it and I'm working with 8-0 seed beads on the herringbone, I might want a 4mm bicone if I'm doing per 2. So you can change up this design and watch the Facebook Live on it as well too if you want. And that way you'll get a different opinion and different versions of a little bit more length in the description of the project and how to switch out materials. Here I am once again adding another bicone, sewing down, coming off to the side, flipping it in my hand, and then when I'm off to the side, adding a 15 before stepping back up into the last bead and getting ready to work on my next herringbone row. As you work on this herringbone stitch, you can see that whether or not you're using Delica beads or if you're using, again, 11-0 seed beads, those bicones are going to look like they're sitting nestled right in the middle. We're going to continue adding our rows of our herringbone stitch as well as the bicones connecting the 2 columns until you get it to a length that you want. You may need a ring mandrel, or you can just wrap it around your ring finger here and try to see size-wise if it fits. You're going to continue doing the rows, and then we'll get ready to bring our piece together and have that seamed up section in the back of the design. Once you get your desired length, it is time to close this up. Now, if you want it to look completely continuous, you can take off your stop bead and undo those rows of ladder stitch. The bottom bead will fall off, and then you'll be able to go in and to use that as a seamless round. I'm going to keep it in there. It's not going to bother me. I'm going to show you how you're going to seam it up. So I'm coming out the last row here that I've completed, and instead of adding my next 2 beads in that ladder stitch row, I'm going to go over to the starting side and I'm going to sew up through beads number 1 and 2 of my first row of my ladder stitch. Then I'm going to move that stop bead out of the way. Then I'm going to sew down through beads number 1 and 2 of row 2 here. And at the same time, I'm going to sew over and come down through bead number 2 on that last row of herringbone. So instead of adding my 2 beads in the middle, you can see it looks seamless already. Instead of adding those 2 beads in the middle of this herringbone row, all I'm doing is sewing up 2, down 2, and back down here. Here in the middle, if you want to, you can go back through a crystal, you can add another crystal, you can add some seed beads, up to you. I'm going to go up through here just to show you this kind of problem solving. Come out through the next bead, going down 2 beads, twist it in my hand, sew through the crystal there. Second time. Then I'm going to come down through those 2 rows of herringbone, go over to the opposite side, and connect up where it meets. Through those 2 beads there of the ladder stitch. And just think about it as you're connecting the lines, connecting the dots. Go down through those 2 beads. In that first row of the ladder stitch, through both, 1 and 2. And then once again back over to the opposite side and down 2 beads. Nice tight pull, and you can see that gives you that nice seamless line the whole way around the piece as you're working with it. What you can do then if you want to, you can see how it goes out a little bit here. If you wanted to, in the middle of the piece, instead of that 6 rows, which just made it a little bit easier to understand, you can do 5. With the delicas, they line up pretty much perfectly with your bead there. And here in the example piece, I did do the 5 rows of it. So from here, you could also add a bigger bead in the middle, have fun designing. All I'm gonna do is sew back to that starter bead and then just tie the thread ends off together and burn them down. When I sew back through the piece here, this is an opportunity to go back again and connect to the other side, just going down along the herringbone stitch, up through the ladder, down through the ladder, reinforcing as you sew along the piece. Once you get back to that starter bead then, you're just going to simply take off that stop bead right next to where they are. I bring my thread and needle to the back of the design, or the interior, take that stop bead off, take those 2 pieces, tie them together, right over left, left over right, nice and tight. They're going to disappear into the inside or the interior of the ring. And then the last thing we're going to do is take our thread burner or our threads up and burn those thread ends down so you won't see it at all. If you want to learn how to do the patchwork or watch the other ones here, you can check out some of the other YouTube videos that we've linked to in the description as well. Go in there, burn those thread edges down, go in and burn them flush towards the project, and your ring is finished and ready for you to wear. Now, you do want to be cautious as far as which beads you are picking to work with when you're creating these herringbone rings. You'll want to avoid some silver lined beads unless they're the Duracoat silver lined, because that lining can come off, gold lined, silver lined when you're working on it. You also want to avoid galvanized beads unless they are that Duracoat or Permafinish galvanized. Those are the ones that you're going to want to use. You can use these in all different color varieties, all different lengths, make them into a bracelet, even some long earrings, and really play around with the spacing of those 2 columns of herringbone stitch, adding beads in the middle like this ring. Thanks so much for joining me in the creation of all these fun herringbone rings. Remember to check out our PotomacBeads.live schedule so you don't miss live classes like this ring on Facebook or YouTube as well. It's always fun to join in the live events versus the recording ones, which you learn a lot from, but the lives you learn even more. As always, if you need any of the materials to make these rings, go ahead and look below the video in the description. That'll bring you back to our website and list out all the supplies for all of the different variations. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more inspirational videos.